and welcome to episode 5 of River Talk. Today is the 21st of October, and I myself am Zach. I will be moderating this, and I'm joined by Trey Kenney and Colin. So what we're going to be starting off with is sort of an election update. We just had a presidential debate on, was it Wednesday, I think?
The last of 3 the presidential debates.
And so what we're really going to look at is see what policies they discussed specifically, as well as where they would stand right now. So let's go ahead and start off with Donald Trump.
Right.
His.
So first off, I want to just quickly say that while I think Trump did better progressively in all 3 debates, I think he did better in the second one than the first one, and he did better in the third one than the second one. I just don't think he did enough to pull off a big victory. Polls can always change, and polls are not the most accurate way of determining how people will vote, but the numbers are against him right now.
And here's the thing, I was watching, CNN, which has grown a reputation for being liberally biased, and they actually released a poll after the debate showing that Trump actually swayed more voters than Hillary Clinton to vote his way in the election.
Yeah. So what that says is that he really did do a much better job of kind of giving good zingers when she kind of dropped the ball. When I think the second or third question was about immigration, and
his famous topic is probably his best issue.
And then we saw Hillary kind of take it a couple different places, and then she ended up talking about Putin and Trump and how they're best friends, and then he called her on it. He said, "Wow, that was a really good tangent from immigration." And I think that people were expecting things like that the whole 3 debates. And at least in my opinion, from what I saw in the third one, is only when he kind of started to tap into that. So I think that definitely played to his favor. Because, we saw during the primaries that he's not at all afraid to bust someone's chops when he gets the opportunity. So.
And here's the thing, he's not a politician by any means. Just like you go from the first to the third debate, he becomes, in a sense, more polished when it comes to becoming a politician, talking in front of a national audience.
Right.
And so that's part of the reason why a lot of people say if he had that same experience he had with the third debate applied to the first one, he wouldn't be in the situation he is right now.
It probably wouldn't be so much of a landslide. We saw President Obama, call him out and say you don't act presidential. Well, at least at the beginning, he definitely showed up.
He definitely has the ability, and of course, Hillary Clinton once again coming in with being
very well prepared,
very
rehearsed. Yeah. And we heard again that Trump didn't go through any mock debates, which maybe that really did do some crucial damage to him in the end.
One of the things that I think about Trump is, and I say this as a very ardent Trump supporter from day one, but when he talks about policy, I think he does very well. The one thing is he's very defensive, so when Hillary attacks him on things that aren't really related to policy, like his opinion on Vladimir Putin, things like that, he gets very defensive, and I think that's what turns a lot of people off. And so that's probably his greatest weakness.
And that is definitely one of the things is he always pivots to defending himself when he could be making a comeback argument with something else relating to Hillary Clinton. And so,
whereas you might see someone a little bit more induced into the political system might kind of try to flip it. He just goes on like you said, the complete defensive, and I think that's where he starts to stutter a little bit, and that's where people start to lose their grip on it.
And it's always been shown, if Donald Trump, if he stays on issues, stays on his policy, his message, he gets more praise from his conservative base, he gets more praise from, other Republican politicians, and it makes him more confident in his.
And it's definitely, a large factor in why he probably doesn't have as large a following. Because the political party, or the Republican Party, is just in civil war right now over whether or not they should support the candidate that was.
Even just a few weeks ago, the RNC stopped doing mailings for the Victory Trump group. I don't know what it's specifically called, but they stopped doing mailings for him, which is another big way you reach out to people if they're not, getting things in the mail, they're not sure where the candidate stands. stuff like that.
Back to the debate a little bit, I noticed that, and this is my opinion again, but like the moderator this time around, you know, we saw the first debate with Lester,
Mm-hmm.
we saw just a little, arguably some favoritism towards Hillary, but nothing concrete. And then, you know, the second debate with the two moderators definitely looked a little more clear cut as to which way they were swayed. But I thought the third moderator did a lot better with the candidates being fair and a lot better to the audience. You know, the first two presidential debates, were, you know, the moderators kind of said, okay, don't make noise. They made noise once they called them out, and then just kind of never happened. But every time, you know, almost every time, moderator called them out. So I think that's, you know, that's definitely a big sway in these presidential debates, is to make sure that the moderator is
Because Chris Wallace, I mean, if you ever watch this, we highly approve the way he did it. He stayed very neutral. He asked the really tough questions to both of them. He treated them fairly equally, gave them the same amount of time. He let them know clearly when their time was done.
Right.
And so it allowed them to, and same thing with the audience, definitely allowed them to focus on the issues more rather than disruptions from the audience.
Yeah. So with the debate, you know, we saw Trump go back and forth with Hillary, pretty well off, I'd argue, you know, but I don't think he, and this is true of all three debates, he really didn't take advantage of some things he really could have capitalized on. Like just in the third debate, you know, the WikiLeaks thing, it was asked about, and Trump could have like grabbed held on to that for probably the rest of the debate, but it seems like he just kind of missed that opportunity. You guys,
Definitely a lot of pickups here and there.
and I mean, you know, we've seen that, I mean, obviously with these two candidates, there's not going to be a lot of policy discussion.
Yeah.
But with big scandalous things like this, you know, that's the meat and potatoes of these kinds of things.
I mean, you look at it either way. You either have Donald Trump, something coming up from him that he did 10 years ago that surfaces in the media, they got to talk about it for like 2 weeks, and then Hillary Clinton, you know, WikiLeaks dump, the media mentions it maybe once and then tries to bury it.
And that's a large portion of where, you know, Trump and Trump supporters, and you know, a lot of people say the media is stacking it against it, and I personally I agree with that. You know, we're talking about solid evidence. You know, these government documents, whether or not you care for WikiLeaks or Assange or whatever. Besides the point, there's like factual evidence against the Clinton Foundation, but the media and the people largely more so focus on, well, Trump inappropriately touched a woman 30 years ago, supposedly with no evidence, and they hadn't gone to the police, and it only comes up now.
But you have solid evidence against Hillary Clinton.
Right. So it's interesting to see, you know, to the people that said no, the media and the election isn't rigged. It's hard to refute that when you try to look at it.
I am far from a Trump supporter you could possibly believe, but I still believe that the media is just being ridiculously biased with their favoritism.
Right. You know, we saw sort of the same thing when the primaries were still going on. I mean, you know, there was a lot of evidence that suggested that you know, the DNC was stacked against Bernie Sanders, and I mean, I'm about as far from a Bernie Sanders supporters as you get.
And that's one thing. That's another thing he could have capitalized on. He kept saying during the debate how she shouldn't have been allowed for president. He never mentioned no. He could have had a zinger where he mentioned how the DNC colluded with the Hillary campaign to cheat Bernie out of the nomination as well. But I mean, I guess that's just something that's not going to happen. There's just going to forget about it.
And you think about, I think Trump mentioned this in their debate. You know, he was talking about the Clinton Foundation, and he was talking about how they've taken large amounts of money from countries like Saudi Arabia, and Qatar was the other one that he mentioned. And you know, Hillary will accept this money from these countries, and she stands, you know, a large part of her platform is that she stands on women's rights and the LGBT whatever communities, equality. And she gets money from these countries that support Sharia law and another plethora of awful things like that. You know, it's like, where does the kind of corruption and the kind of two-facedness, like where does that cut off?
And see, the thing that really gets me about taking money from Saudi Arabia is their ideology is practically the same as ISIS, Salafism. The only difference is instead of trying to kill us like ISIS is, they're trying to sell us oil. And I mean, this is an ideology that teaches for the persecution of anyone who's not, you know, a practicing Muslim, endorses the like throwing of gay people off buildings, as we've seen the Islamic State do, executions for people just doing the most slightly not Islamic things. And it's just, I mean, Hillary claims to stand for women in the LGBT community, and to take money from, you know, factions that support that ideology.
Yeah.
It's really interesting election. Like, there's no other way to put it.
Right. It's just, and it provokes. You know, it starts to make you think that, you know, some of these conspiracy theories.
I mean, it also begs the question: has our country lost a moral compass when we nominate these two people to be the next president of the United States?
Yeah. I've seen a lot of posts around the internet lately of like, you know, this election has cost the nation like somewhere near like $5 or $6 billion, and these are the two that we come up with. And I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a Trump supporter, with being a Hillary supporter, with being a never Trump and never Hillary. I don't think there's anything irrational about that. I just think that perhaps you know, people talk about how the system is broken. I don't think the system is completely broken. I think we've had the wrong people in the wrong positions for way too long.
And welcome back to River Talk. We had a short break there, and we were just talking about giving you an update on what's going on in the election right now. So now we're going to lean towards where the candidates are polling nationally, how the Electoral College is looking for them right now. So the magic number is 270. That's how you get to the White House. Right now, a lot of polls, between the tapes and debate performances, polling extremely varies right now. You have some polls that have Hillary up by 13, which we just saw earlier. We looked at them earlier, and then some polls have them up by 7, and then there's some outlying polls that have them Trump up by 1, 2 points, sometimes 5 points if you're lucky. So if we go state by state, though, how's it looking?
Well, I think state by state, you know, Hillary still has kind of a landslide, almost of a lead. You know, she's got all these different coastal states, and a lot of the coastal states polling a lot of electoral votes. And then, you know, Trump's got a lot of support in different states, but not the states where he absolutely needs it, like North Carolina.
Like, you know, the Midwestern states from coast to coast, basically. It's just they typically vote Republican, and he's polling behind, actually, in like states like Arizona, Utah. I think it had was it McCullen? McMullen. He's up by, like, the last poll I saw out of Utah had him up by 4 points, and he's an independent candidate.
Right. And that's the thing, too, that I don't think a lot of people consider. You know, talk about it's just Trump versus Hillary. There are an enormous list of other candidates. Most of them don't show up in all 50 states. Give you, but like, you know, you see Gary Johnson, for example. You know, he doesn't really have a great shot of winning. He's, you know, running on the Libertarian ticket, but you know, he takes away votes from both big candidates. You know, same thing with Jill Stein. Same thing with Evan McMullen. Apparently, you know, it's an interesting thing to think about. You know, people want to talk about how our two-party system needs to be changed, and it's interesting that we're kind of in the metamorphosis of, we're in the early stages of that change. You know, I think you told me, Zach, that you know, if Johnson can get 5%,
it's 5%
of the vote, then the Libertarian the Libertarian Party already has a spot on the debate stage.
Yes, if they get that much nationally, then they are then deemed a major party.
Right. So, I mean, there are clear benefits to that. You know,
It's not looking good for Jill Stein, by the way.
We've seen this kind of metamorphosis of less left-wing versus right-wing and more authoritarian versus libertarian kind of mindsets. So I think it's a good thing overall. But you know, when you have these people, I would still argue the majority of Americans that still approve of the two-party system, you know, they're seeing it as possibly a negative thing. So, you know, Hillary, it's very heavily looking like she's going to win.
Yeah, So if we look at just states that are leaning towards a particular candidate, we have 262 for Hillary Clinton and 170 for Donald Trump. So as you can see, there's an obvious deficit by Donald Trump. And I mean, with all the toss-up states that are remaining, like, okay, Nevada, Minnesota, Florida, Ohio, like all these states, like she cannot win one more state basically. He's got to just swipe the board with the remaining states that are considered toss-ups. But
you know, it's less than what, 20 days.
Yeah,
until
that's
election
gonna be-
day. It's going to be something
quite a momentous task.
Right. It's going to be the story of the century.
See, my hope as a Trump supporter is that I'm hoping that maybe his base, you know, blue collar, working class people are just not picking up the phone for the polls. Okay, that's probably a long shot,
Right, but
that's probably our best hope.
Right, but I think what you're getting at is like, you know, these polls can be, are not necessarily the most accurate way of predicting the outcome. I mean, you know, look at Brexit. You know, there's a large majority of people that thought they were going to vote to stay, and then completely turned around on them.
Even
And
the
there's
leaders of the movement were saying that they weren't going to win.
Right.
Then, of course, you go back to the Democratic primary. Bernie Sanders was down by 9-10 percentage points the last poll before the primary night, and then he comes back and wins with a full percentage point. I mean, it really comes down to how well you motivate your supporters to go out and vote.
That's another thing. You know, I think, you know, when we talk about people not answering the phone for their polls. I think another thing that could very greatly help Trump's effort is if the kind of divide in the Republican Party kind of, you know, if people like Ron Paul and whatnot stopped saying, you know, I don't like Trump, if they just got behind their party, I think that would turn a lot more votes for Trump. I mean, we even saw with the Democratic Party, you know, there was like a very large divide between Bernie's supporters and Hillary's supporters, and then, you know, we saw, you know, Bernie endorse Hillary, and so that obviously grew her kind of source voters by quite a bit. So I think that, you know, if the GOP really got behind Trump, or, I mean, they don't even have to like, I know most people probably don't like him, but, you know, they want to get behind him because for policy's sake, you know.
Or just to not let Hillary.
Right, that's another thing. That's, you know, the Never Hillary Party, which, like I said earlier, I don't think being never Trump, never Hillary, pro-Trump,
And here's the thing, they always talk about they're so concerned about who the next Supreme Court justice is going to be and how, I guess, they're going to vote down whoever Hillary, I assume, is going to put out there. But it's just like, well, gee, if you're not going to be behind your candidate, you're not going to get any candidate you want for the Supreme Court. It's really...
It's another thing for the country to be divided on. You know, the
Yeah.
country's so divided on everything. There's so many hairs to split.
I mean, it's just like, the country is kind of divided between the extremes of both party, kind of.
Right, and then there are people that take a step back and say, what are we doing? You know, we're such a first world country, such a I don't want to say role model, but like, you know, other countries look to the United States and kind of see, well, Christ, we put these people in power, and look at the madness that's going on.
I mean, a lot of people say at the last elections that we've been having, like, more and more people are starting to realize that it's just an endless cycle of voting for the lesser of two evils. So, with whoever you support on election day, just go out and vote. It's your civic duty. Please do so. And with that, we're going to end it here. Thanks for watching.
Trump 2016.